In this video, we share Reverend Catherine Reed's interview with longtime member, Jennifer J. In her earlier years, Jennifer attended the Burnley School of Professional Art in Seattle. She found out about Reverend Reinhardt and Aquarian Foundation in a book written by Susie Smith, Prominent American Ghosts. There is a chapter in the book about the Burnley School of Professional Art and Keith Milton Reinhardt. The entire interview can be heard on www.aquarianfoundation.com.
Here in Seattle, I'm with Jennifer from Aquarian Foundation, who has agreed to let me interview her for today and for the posterity of Aquarian Foundation, and to share some of her experiences in Aquarian Foundation. So hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking the time out today. I really do appreciate it. So if you're ready,
My pleasure. Okay.
are you ready to start?
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you first find out about Aquarian Foundation?
I first found out about it in Susie Smith's book, Prominent American Ghosts. My mother gave it to me for Christmas once as a kind of a joke, because I had been a student at the Burnley Art School where Susie Smith she was interviewing with Master Kamara about a ghost that had been prominently appeared at the Burnley Art School, and I was the first student there who probably encountered the ghost. But I didn't believe in ghosts, even though it was right there in front of me or behind me, and I could feel it breathing down my neck. I thought, no, there's no such thing as ghosts. It's impossible. So I refused to bow to logic and said, no, not possible. I didn't tell anybody about it. So my mom found this book, and she just said, you won't believe this, but while you were a student back in 1959, I think, at the Burnley School, there was a ghost, as somebody said, ha ha ha, you know. And I knew exactly what she meant, because the day we went into the art school to sign me up, we went to the coat room. That's the room, I think, where they actually held the seance with Master Kamara. And I could feel somebody breathing down the back of my neck. I turned around and there was nobody there. I thought, this place is going to be haunted or something. And no, it can't be. So anyway, that's how I first heard about the Aquarian Foundation.
Was through the ghosts or through the book, or
Through
through Susie's book?
Susie's book, right.
Okay, and then you and your friend, I believe Sharon, decided to come to...
Well, that was considerably later. That was by 1975.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I just forgot all about the ghosts and Aquarian Foundation. Anyway, and I was an animal rights activist, and I was working on animal rights things, and a whole bunch of weird, spooky, I won't go because it'll be here all night, spooky things happened that were noticed by the other people that I was working with.
Yeah.
And they became afraid to work with me because they thought something bad was going to happen to them, because all these various weird things happened that were kind of threatening. And so one of them, this fellow was the science advisor to the city of Fresno, so these were professional scientists. Mm-hmm. They said, I don't know how to tell you. Have you ever thought of consulting an exorcist? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, just every time we get to meet with you, somebody dies, something bad happens. He said, it's beyond the norm. It just doesn't usually happen that way. And then the woman that I was working with at the time, she was the head of the Humane Society of the United States area in San Francisco. And she said, well, I don't believe in anything. But I said, but sometimes there's something going on here. She said, I really am afraid to work with you. And finally, the straw that broke the camel's back was we borrowed somebody's car to drive down to Olympia to do lobbying for an animal rights bill. And it was a big rainstorm. In the middle of the street, the car blows a tire, it gets a flat tire, and we're stranded in the middle of the street of the highway, the freeway, with cars speeding around, just barely hitting us, and this flat tire, and we have to get out and stand on the side of the road. Anyway, she says, we're going to get back in that car, get it fixed. We're going back. We're not going to Olympia. I said, but Charlene, said, we're supposed to testify at this hearing. She said, I'm not going anyplace else with you. I'm not going anyplace else with you. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I said, this is crazy. And I said, we have a job to do here. Let's just do this. And she said, no. She said, no. So finally, I needed these people to work with because they were important to my cause. And so I said, well, look, what can I do to convince you this is ridiculous? And the other fellow that was from the city of Fresno said, well, like I said, an exorcist. I said, okay, what Yellow Pages, the phone book perhaps? And then this was, well, maybe a spiritualist church. And I said, I don't think there are any spiritualist churches, are there, around here? He said, well, look at the Yellow Pages. So I looked at the Yellow Pages. There's the Aquarian Foundation. I thought, oh, yeah, I remember that from Susie Smith's book. And so my friend Sharon, who was an animal rights activist with me, I said, well, maybe we should go over there and just talk to humor these people. It was humor them. And she said, you really think something big is going to happen? I said, I don't know, but I got to do something about it. These people aren't going to work with me. So we got in we went over there. All kinds of things happened on the way to kind of stop us from going there that were kind of odd, but we didn't go to what they were. But we finally got there, and it was a weekday. I think it was maybe a Saturday afternoon or something. And Julie Sagan, who was a member of the church, was sitting there on the porch. And we walked in, and we hadn't called or anything. No one was expecting us. And we came to the door, and Julie said, oh, it's about time. I've been waiting for you all afternoon. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I knew you were coming today. And I said, really? I said, that didn't make any sense. But anyway, so when Julie sat down and started telling us all about the church, all about ascended masters and all this stuff, two people were, well, my friend Sharon was, I think she was kind of psychic, but I wasn't at all, so I didn't believe in anything at all. I'm listening to all this stuff that sounded like sheer nonsense. And I was polite to her, but I thought, well, this is ridiculous, but I'm going to be polite, I'll be nice. So, and she said, fine, she said, well, now, if you really want to see this for yourself, Keith Milton Reinhardt's going to be in Tacoma tonight, and here's the address where he's going to be. Come to the meeting. It was $5 donation to go.
Okay.
That's not a whole big donation.
No.
And so, and she said, well, why don't you just come and see for yourself, because I think you'll be impressed. And so I looked at her and said, do you want to drive to Tacoma? She said, yeah, I'll drive. So we went to Tacoma that night, and Master Kabara was there. It was just after we had just missed the big spiritualist convention in 1975. This may have been the first meeting they had after. It was full of people who had been to the convention.
Okay.
And so we had no idea what they were talking about. It was in Lila Powers' garage. And we met Lila Powers there, and she was this lovely lady. It was, but everybody there was very spiritually inclined. You could say the way they talked, and they were just into this. And Sharon and I were just we felt like fish out of water, really, and we didn't think we belonged here at all. And so we sat down and towards the back of the room where nobody would kind of see us. And then we were asked to put in billets if we wanted. So we put in some billet. My billet was, why have this problem with people refusing to work with me because they think something bad is going to happen to them? And so that was my question. And so that wasn't, the thing that was impressive was that Master Kamar brought out sacred objects. And they were, one of them was, he said, this contains the blue ray, and it was probably it was a blue Moria stone. I couldn't see what it was too much. It was a small blue stone. And Sharon and I both saw a big ray of blue come out and shoot across the room. It's like a big laser beam.
From inside this jinn crystal.
Right, exactly. And this is all people, hundreds of people, well, hundreds, but I would say, a lot of garage full of people. There was standing room only, people all standing there. And we looked at this thing and we thought, how does he do that? And then he picked up another, this pink heart stone, a small little stone. And this contains the flaming pink heart of Christ or something. And we saw that not only could we see this thing, big, huge flames, like a big blowtorch, but it got about 3-4 feet high, came out and also made noise. Like you could hear a blowtorch go on. And we could see this big stuff, and he was holding his hand, he wasn't being burned by it. And Sharon and I looked at this stuff, we said, God, how does he do that? Because we looked around to see what could make that happen. And afterwards, we came up, after the meeting was over, we came up and said, well, how did he do that? How did he make that happen? And somebody said, so what are you talking about? well, how do you make those flames? I mean, he wasn't burned or anything. What's going on? And he says, you saw that? He said, of course we saw that. How could you miss it? It was this great big, huge arcs of fire coming out of this little stone. And they said, well, we didn't see that. I said, you had to have seen that. And the sheriff said, well, we saw that. How come you didn't? You're right there. They said, well, that means you're psychic. It wasn't physical. You saw something psychically. And we each other said, I don't think so. We're not psychic. And they said, well, you were if you saw that. And so we asked many other people if they'd seen this, and nobody had seen it. And so we thought, okay. That was immediate to me proof that this was real.
Okay.
Because we saw it and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant, and I was, people being honest about it, I mean, I couldn't see a reason why they would not be honest about not having seen it. So suddenly then, my whole idea of the universe changed in about 1 second, you know? and
That's pretty phenomenal.
yeah, but that's how the value of that phenomena to me. I mean, even though I'd encountered a ghost before and all that, I still didn't believe it. But when I saw this, that's the thing. So after that, there was nothing that anyone could tell me, but this didn't exist. I would never believe them again.
Wow. So so from that experience, how long did it take for you to come back to another meeting?
Oh, we wanted to come back right away, but it was awkward to explain to. I came from a family of atheists. We just didn't do things like that. So I had to think of some excuse for where I was going. And Sharon was married at the time, and her husband wouldn't have gone for this stuff. He would have thought we were nuts.
Yeah.
So we had to come up with excuses every time we went to doing something else. And finally, it kind of came out. My mom said, "You're going to a church." And I said, "Oh, no, it's not a church." I said, "It's a mystery school." He says, "It's a church." And finally, I hung my head in shame.
He said, yes. So from there, you joined the church? You became a member of the church?
I became a member. I remember it was the end of 75 or the beginning of 1976,
Okay.
whatever it was. It was very
Didn't
cool.
take too long.
Oh, no. I would have joined immediately, but it just took a little while to come up with. I had to have some cash and things. And in those days, I didn't have my own money. I had my parents' money, and they just, whatever I needed, I could just have. I mean, they didn't have any restrictions, except this, because they wouldn't approve of somebody spending money on a church.
So of all the things in your world, the most real and true thing for you was
they wouldn't any of their money going to, because to my mother's mind, churches were places that just preyed on people's weak minds and took their money. And so strong-minded people didn't believe in nonsense like that. So I couldn't tell her, I couldn't take her money and use it for this. I mean, she'd have found it anyway, because you'd be writing a check. So I had to think of some ways to get money separately from her so that I could join the church.
That's amazing. And that was just to get a membership donation going. So
Yeah.
what benefits have you found over the years? How has it added to your life that you have continued, was it over 50 years, to come on a regular basis, more than anyone else I know?
Well, first of all, of course, it was the sheer importance of finding out that there was a spirit world.
Okay.
Because if you grew up as an atheist, then your worst fear was dying because you ate nothing. And so your whole life was colored by this fear of death. Anything you did that was fun or exciting was, well, but memento mori, like you remember you will die, and it means nothing. So your life. So I thought when I was 3 years old, the only thing that was worth doing was find some way to live forever, because otherwise there was no point in anything.
And then you found it.
And I didn't think it was possible, but I thought, well, just sit down and think about it a lot. Don't go to school because everybody else goes to school and they don't come up with the right answer. So if you just sit here and think about it, maybe you'll come up with the answer. Never came up with it until I got to church, and guess what? Yeah, you can live forever.
You got the whole of the truth.
Got the whole of the truth. And so, and when you saw it coming with the evidence like this, it was quite impressive. And then, subsequent seances and things where you saw just overwhelming evidence that this was the case. And then the lessons. I mean, the lessons were, once you heard once you realized this stuff was true, then you wanted to get any lesson you could, any smattering of information you could from ascended consciousness, because it was something you needed in your life. Everything you had around you was enhanced by the fact that you had this. And then we got the benefit of the sacred objects. And that came, we saw them at work, first of all, the first time we came, we saw the lights coming up. So, I mean, I didn't have to be convinced there was something real in these sacred objects because I'd seen it.
Yeah.
And once you had those things and you realized that you had a certain degree of control over not just your own life, but things going on around you because you had the sacred objects.
Wow, that's amazing. So, that you'd like to share in the interview for the posterity of Aquarian Foundation, for the people that you meet who might be interested in the church, what would you have to say to them to encourage them to find their way to Aquarian Foundation?
Well, one of the main benefits of it is that you get from the lessons that you get is that you learn how to do things like visualization and affirmation to not only have more control over your own life, your own health, your own prosperity, but also to have a great deal of influence on things that go on around you that you otherwise wouldn't be able to have any control over. And this is something I found out very early, that by sending light to situations, there was an animal rights activist working in the mayor's task force on animal stuff in the city council at that time. And I learned that by sending light to situations that they would come out right in a way that I couldn't do any other way. And one was where the city council was about to take a vote on sending all the animals from the shelter to research. That would have been a bad thing for the animals. It would have destroyed the animal control program completely. People would just dump their animals rather than take them to shelter. So I used light to the city council members and to the president of the city council at that time not to do this. And when I came in for the day of the hearing on this, the president of the city council at that time was Sam Smith. He said, well, you know what, we're not going to vote on that. We were just kind of kidding you to keep you guys on top of things. That isn't true. They really did have a serious proposal, but they saw that with light it worked. We hadn't done anything except send light.
So that was your evidence for the work that you were doing with the tools that you'd learned.
Exactly. The tools that we had were very useful. And so that was just the first political thing I was able to do with it, was that, to get something straightened out by sending light to it. Light worked in a way that you could never, I mean, you might be able to get that same result by lots of, getting thousands of signatures on petitions and things like that. But this was an awful lot faster and easier.
A little bit of good in God. It pointed in that direction.
Exactly. So it just saved me an awful lot of work. I know that. I thought, gee, this is wonderful. And I saw that it did. It was that you were healing situations by following the directions, the affirmations that we used were things that we learned at the lessons with the masters, and taking master lessons to heart, paying close attention to them, and see how much you can get done in the world. So it was wonderful.
So if you had to come across someone who had a vague interest or was looking for something in the world that would give them hope or anything, what would you say to them? What would your advice be to them?
It would be, I would suggest you check out Aquarian Foundation.
Come with me.
Yeah, and you'll get in touch with a consciousness higher than your own, and you'll be surprised at the things that you actually can do that you don't know you can do, because you're not at that information years yet. But once you have the information, use how to use it, you'll find that you are in a much better place than you were before.
A little bit of conscious participation in your life.
Right, definitely.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I appreciate your time and for sharing your experiences over the last couple of years. May you have as many more years with us, at least another 50, in the physical, to keep sharing with us all these wonderful things that you've had in your life. So thank you so much. God bless you.